Okay, welcome back, everyone. We're going to get started with some loving kindness meditation. Since I taught this morning, we're going to practice this some more so that you guys get a chance to experience this again. Remember, I'm going to start with the chanting to ease us into the meditation. Then we're going to do the breathing mindfulness meditation for a short period of time. Then I'm going to come in with the affirmations for the loving kindness meditation, which you can repeat in your own mind on the out breath. Then we'll go back to the breathing mindfulness and then back to the chanting. Okay. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Bhagava Bhutang Bhagavanang Abhivateyami Savakato Bhagavata Tammo Dhammang Namasami Supatipano Bhagavato Sāvaka Saṅkho Saṅghang Namami Namo Rasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Rasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Rasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Iti piso Bhagava Arahang Samma Sambuddho Vicacaranang Sammuno Sakato Rokavito Anutero Purisa Dhamma Sati Satatawa Manusanang Bhoto Bhagavati. Okay, with the lower body and hands and arms comfortable, and the upper body erect, just close the eyes and just start breathing in through the nose and out through the nose. Here you're just looking to establish the breath, a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. Not forced or controlled, just a gradual inhale through the nose, experiencing the full breath. And then whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose, breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. Your breath may not match up with the guidance that I'm providing, and that's okay. I'm just here for guidance. You can use this voice as a reminder that whenever you get to the next inhale, breathe in gradually through the nose, developing a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. And then whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose, experiencing the full breath. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. Once the breath is well established, start fixating the mind on the breath, either the sound of the breath coming into the nose or the sensation of the air moving over the skin into the nose. The breath is the present moment. Fixate the mind on the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the mind fixated on the breath, whenever you notice that it moves off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. No need to observe the thought, label it, judge it, analyze it, or even try to figure out where it's coming from. Whenever you notice that the mind is moved off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. I'm going to be quiet now and let you do this work of focusing on the breath, cutting off and letting go anytime the mind moves off the breath. Then I'll be back with more guidance on loving kindness meditation. You have nowhere to go. There's nothing to do. No one needs you right now. This is your time to focus on the breath. Breathing in and out. Continuing to breathe in through the nose and out through the nose. Repeat these affirmations in the mind on the out breath. May I be peaceful. May I be safe. May I be well. May I be free of all discontentedness and the suffering that it causes. May mom and dad be peaceful. May they be safe. May they be well. May they be free of all discontentedness and the suffering that it causes. May my family, friends, neighbors, and co-workers all be peaceful. May they be safe. May they be well. May they be free of all discontentedness in the suffering that it causes. May all those who have harmed me be peaceful. May they be safe. May they be well. May they be free of all discontentedness in the suffering that it causes. May all those who I have harmed be peaceful. May they be safe. May they be well. May they be free of all discontentedness in the suffering that it causes. May all beings, wherever they reside, be peaceful. May all beings be safe. May all beings be well. May all beings be free of discontentedness in the suffering that it causes. Now return back to breathing mindfulness meditation, focusing on the breath, cutting off and letting go anytime the mind moves off the breath. Breathing in and out. อะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธภะคะวาโอตังภะคะวันหังอภิวาเทมิสวากขาโตมหาควตาธัมโมธัมมังนามัสสามิสุปฏิปันโนมหาควโตสาวกสังโฆสังฆังนามามินะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะอิติปิโสมะคะวะอะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธวิชาจารณังสัมมโนสกขาโตโรกาวิตุอนุเตโรปุริสาธัมมาสติสัตตาตาวามนุสนังโอโตภะคะวะติ Okay, if you guys would like to slowly make your way out of meditation. Once again, welcome back to everyone. Nice to see all of you guys here this evening. Welcome to everyone online as well. I would like to just share a few things about loving kindness meditation, and then I'm going to open up to any questions you guys have about loving kindness meditation, because tomorrow we're going to be moving off into other things, and I would like to be sure you guys have what you need on loving kindness meditation. I taught this to you this morning, and now we've done it twice. You guys see the affirmations that I'm doing where it's, may my friends, family, coworkers, neighbors, these kinds of things, be peaceful and so forth. I'm doing this as a way to generalize our affirmations for everybody that's here, because I'm leading you guys all in a meditation. But in order for you to really get the most benefit out of this type of meditation, you're going to need to customize it for your specific needs. You're going to need to put Barbara or Susie or Rebecca or whoever it is in there that you have anger and hatred and ill will towards. You're going to need to include them in your meditation. You'd probably like to include the first ring or two of people that you do have loving kindness for, because that'll help bubble up the loving kindness in your mind. And then kind of like a ring or two of people that you're more neutral about, maybe like coworkers or neighbors. You don't actually hate them, but you don't necessarily love them either. You're just kind of more neutral about them. But then you like to put a ring or two of individuals in there that you do have anger and hatred towards. This is how you're going to eliminate it. And then ultimately you'd like to get to all beings. So your loving kindness meditation is going to change over time, because you're going to be moving people in and out of your meditation. It's going to take you several weeks, and maybe in some cases several months, to really eliminate your anger and hatred towards any particular person. It can be an individual person, or it can be groups of individuals too. If you hate all police officers, you could say, may all police officers be peaceful, right? If there's any groups or individuals, you would like to include them in there. So when I first started this, I did myself and my mom a lot, because That's where I had a lot of anger and hatred towards myself and towards my mom. And then over about a 6-month period, that changed. And then I started customizing this for other people. So when I was in business, this is when I was first starting to do this. Maybe there was a customer that I had some situation with and there was some anger that arose there. Or maybe there was a certain employee that I had anger towards and I might have included them in my meditation. One time there was a landlord who came into one of the places I was renting and got up in my face and threatened to kill me in front of my employees, in front of my customers. He went into my meditation for a little while, right? Then maybe you're driving to work and someone cuts you off in traffic and maybe you get really angry. Maybe that person goes in your meditation for a little while. You don't even know their name. It might be, may that person who cut me off in traffic be peaceful. Right? And what you might even notice as you start doing this meditation more regularly is that you start using these in your day-to-day life. That when you're driving down the road and someone does cut you off, instead of honk, 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 middle finger, whatever it is that you might typically do, it might be, all right, brother, may you be well. Take your lane, have it. It's yours, right? So might find that you'll see that these affirmations will kind of come through, not just in meditation, but in your day-to-day life. You might be thinking that way too. This is something that I didn't teach you this morning, and I'm interested to add it in here so you guys understand that you're going to need to customize this. Even if these people are no longer in your life and you're never going to see them ever again, if your mind's holding on to anger and hatred towards them, you're going to need to include them in your meditation for a bit. If these people are dead and you'll never even see them again, you might need to include them. If your mind has any anger at all about any being whatsoever, you're going to need to clear the mind of that. And this meditation is what's going to help you do that. So do you guys have any questions on this meditation? Anything you'd like to ask? Yep, Robert. Those of you guys online, you can put your questions into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, or you can raise your hand in Zoom and ask any questions that you like.
So you've said it maybe a couple months or something to help with these things. I've struggled a lot with politics in the U.S., and I'm always, may Trump and his people be well. Do I just keep doing that no matter what? Yeah.
So when you're noticing the anger coming up, you would like to be using this meditation and the affirmations. You would like to be doing this meditation every day.
Yeah.
Right. And then who you put in your meditation, usually you use like the squeaky wheel strategy. Like if you have a shopping cart and you have 4 wheels and there's one that's squeaking, you're going to put oil on that wheel. Right. So during a particular period of your life, if you're noticing a lot of anger towards politicians and that particular politician, then you might need to put him in your meditation for a week or 2 or 3 or however long. Okay. Right. And then if there's somebody else that your angers are rising for, you need to put them in there. Maybe Trump comes out for a little while and this other person goes in. So it's like the squeaky wheel approach.
And just to verify, you said it's like you do it for about 4 to 6 groups.
Yeah, what you'll notice is your mind can manage kind of 6 to 8 rings. 6 to 8. Anything more than 8, it's kind of like too much for the mind to manage. So we did 6 rings in both of these meditations.
Got it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thanks.
Mm-hmm. We have a question coming in from Janae. She says, why do we use affirmations in the meditation? What this affirmation is doing is it's rewiring your mind. You're not actually trying to change these other people. You're not trying to will something to happen. You're not trying to wish anything. What you're doing is you're rewiring your mind. So it's like, may I think of mom and dad in a peaceful way. Right? May I think of mom and dad in a way to be safe, right? So you're rewiring your mind so that now when you're around mom and dad, you're thinking of them in a more peaceful, safe, well, and free of discontentedness, so that now your intention, speech, and actions can emanate from that loving kindness, that genuine interest in seeing them be well. So you're rewiring your mind. You're not trying to change mom and dad. You're working on changing your own mind so that now when you're interacting with them and you have contact with them, you'll be more loving and kind, and that's what's going to transform your relationships with them. It's not you trying to change them. This meditation isn't for that. There's no meditation that you could ever do that's going to change other people. It's always about changing your own mind. Okay, let me see if we have anything else. I don't see anything else online. Any more questions here? Oh, Robert?
Is it better to be more specific or more general? Because I often struggle with may those who cause me harm be peaceful, safe, and well.
Yeah, if there's any particular affirmation that's feeling uncomfortable for you, do that one more, because that one is triggering a craving, desire, attachment in the mind. But being specific is ideal. So if it's, this person Bob has stolen money from you, and you are harboring some anger towards them for that, then you would like to make sure you say, may Bob be peaceful, safe, so forth and so on. And then you can use these general ones in some cases if you'd like. That's an option too. But the general ones are going to be specific to you. So for example, if you have hatred towards police officers or lawyers or politicians, that's how you can use a general one, but it's still going to be specific to you.
So I find that I have a hard time thinking of those that have caused me harm. And so I find myself trying to scan through during that time and not having somebody or something to focus on.
Yeah, so in that case, before your meditation starts, you'll probably like to pick a person or two from that list and use that name. That's where you would like to customize it for yourself.
Okay, thanks.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Okay, so no more questions on loving kindness meditation. Oh, sorry, ma'am. Yep.
My question is about understanding well the words discontentment, creating suffering.
Mm-hmm.
Could you clarify this?
Sure.
How these two are? I mean, I understand how they are connected, but creating suffering is in general or towards me or.
Yeah, so the discontent feelings are the conditioned pleasant feelings, painful feelings, and neither painful nor pleasant. This is where the mind is forming its inner feelings based on some condition. So if it's sunny outside, someone might get so happy, right? But that's a conditional feeling. That feeling arises, it changes, and it fades away. But now when it's raining, now you experience the painful feeling, the sadness, the frustration, the agitation or annoyance. Or if your bank account balance is here, you might get really happy. But then when it goes down here, an individual gets sad or frustrated. These are called conditioned feelings. This is the problem in the unenlightened mind, is that as long as the mind is forming its inner feelings based on some condition, it's not liberated. It can't experience permanent peace and permanent joy and unconditional happiness, because unconditional happiness is a permanent mental state that one can experience. But as long as the mind continues to experience conditional feelings, which is the discontentedness, it can't experience the peace and the joy. So as long as the mind is discontent in any way, then it's going to keep experiencing what we might describe as suffering. So there's these discontent feelings, and then because of that, an individual is suffering, and they're experiencing a certain amount of suffering in terms of their mental anguish that they're experiencing. Okay. All right. So it was requested by a student that we have a discussion about what we did today, going to the orphanage. By the way, thank you guys for all your support to help this orphanage. It's wonderful that we put together a bunch of money. We came together as a community. We provided over 20,000 baht worth of supplies to this orphanage, and we gathered those up and took it to them. And we even gave them 1,016 baht in cash to be able to take care of themselves. They said that this would feed them for about a week. And we also gave them a lot of cleaning supplies and shampoo and toothpaste and all this kind of stuff. So there was a student on the way back that asked if we could have a discussion about this so they could understand how it fits into the overall path to enlightenment, a practice like this. So I'll help you guys to understand this. So if you've learned the Four Noble Truths with me, then you understand the problem that the Buddha discovered, which is the discontent feelings, the conditional, pleasant, painful, and neither painful nor pleasant feelings. The cause of that problem is craving, desire, attachment, the longing, the yearning, the chasing after the objects of your affection. And when the mind is longing and yearning, if it gets what it wants, it gets those pleasant feelings. And if it doesn't get what it wants, it gets the painful feelings. So now the way to eliminate this is the third noble truth, where you're training your mind to eliminate craving, desire, attachment, that longing and yearning. That's the path to enlightenment. One of the major things you're doing is you're training the mind to eliminate that longing and yearning and forming your inner feelings on some condition. And then the fourth noble truth is the way to eliminate that. The complete solution is the Eightfold Path. That's the complete perfect plan that the Buddha discovered that is going to eliminate your cravings, desires, attachments, those 8 individual factors. So what you're working to do is you're working to soften up the mind and train it to be able to let go. Because craving, desire, attachment, the mind's going to hold on. It's going to cling. It's going to long and yearn, right? So there's this craving where it's longing and yearning for pleasant feelings, and it's looking for something external to provide those pleasant feelings. And then when the mind gets what it wants, it clings to those things, and it wants them to be permanent, right? So this is what the mind does. The mind gets this idea like, oh, I know what'll solve my problems, a boyfriend, a girlfriend. That's what I need. So now the mind longs and yearns for a boyfriend or girlfriend. And then once you find one, you get all these pleasant feelings, you get so happy, and then you cling to it and you hold on to it, and it actually sabotages your relationship because you end up crushing it because you're holding on to it so tight. So what the Buddha is teaching you with breathing mindfulness meditation is when you're focused on the breath and the mind moves off the breath, you're cutting that off and letting it go, training your mind to let go, let go, let go, right? So your goal of this breathing mindfulness meditation is not to eliminate your thoughts. The goal is to develop mindfulness or awareness of mind. So you're aware when your mind's longing and yearning, and you're developing concentration where you can have focus and clarity, and you're training your mind to let go. Let go, let go. So that now in day-to-day life, as part of that Eightfold Path, you're practicing awareness of mind all throughout your day, where you're aware of any wholesome or unwholesome qualities in your mind. So that whenever you see an unwholesome quality in your mind, you can then cut it off and let it go. And then when you see wholesome qualities, you can apply right effort to support it and encourage it and not allow it to fade. So this is what you're doing with meditation and with what you're doing with the Eightfold Path. What generosity is doing for you, because that's what we did today. We practiced generosity, loving kindness, and wisdom. Generosity is the giving and sharing of something like your time, effort, energy, and resources without any expectation of anything in return. Because what the mind will do with its craving, desire, attachment is it will hold on. You will hold on and want things to be permanent, and it won't want to share with other people. It will become very selfish. So this generosity, if you frequently practice generosity, it doesn't have to always be going to an orphanage. It doesn't have to always be giving financial support, those kinds of things. But there's ways to practice generosity every single day. You can be practicing generosity. And as you're practicing that generosity, the mind's learning how to not always want things to be self-satisfying. Because that's what the mind's doing with craving, desire, attachment. It wants things to be self-satisfying. That if I spend 3 hours doing this, I want this in return. Or if I spend 3 days doing this, I want this in return. That's what craving, desire, attachment is doing to the mind. But what you're learning and what you're practicing is how to do things in the world without wanting something in return from other people. And now when you're regularly doing this frequently throughout your day, you're practicing generosity in different ways. Now, when that anger is arising, it's much easier to let it go because you've trained your mind to let go. But as long as you're not practicing generosity, your mind's going to be selfish to a certain degree. It's going to keep holding on and holding on. So that's why a frequent practice of generosity, where you're doing meditation 2 or 3 times a day, that's beneficial for you, but you also need to be practicing generosity frequently throughout your day. It can be holding a door for somebody going into a store. It can be taking out the trash at the temple. If you guys see people sometimes taking out the trash here, it can be sweeping. It can be bringing in some snacks for your fellow classmates. There's many different ways that you can practice generosity. Somebody drops a wallet on the floor as you're walking down the sidewalk. Excuse me, ma'am, you dropped your wallet, right? This is generosity. This is sharing your time, effort, energy, or resources more than is strictly required in any given situation without any expectation of anything in return. So you would like to be frequently practicing generosity, and that's going to soften up your mind and make it easier to let go. And then as you learn how to let go and the mind learns how to do that, eventually the mind's never going to grab on, so that then you can learn how to have relationships without grabbing on and wanting it to be permanent. So that now, if you meet somebody new, you have a real affection for them, you get really close to them, your mind's maybe holding on to them really tightly, and you feel really great when they're with you, but then when they're away from you, you miss them, or you feel lonely, or you feel bored. This is because the mind's holding on and craving permanence. But if you can get used to impermanence, that people are going to come and go in and out of your life, you don't have to hold on to them mentally, that you can spend time with people like this in a retreat, and then when it's over, okay, see you guys later, right? We might see each other again, we may not, and that's okay. But if the mind holds on and clings, now you have a great time when you're hanging out with these people. But then when it's over, you might be sad because you're not going to see these people anymore. But you can train your mind to not grab on and hold on to these relationships, wanting them to be permanent, where instead of squeezing it and sabotaging it, you can hold a relationship in your hand like this, where it has the freedom to do whatever it is that you guys are interested in doing, where you're not trying to crush your friendships and your life partners and your children, putting expectations on them and trying to control them. You can train your mind to be open and let go, where you're not holding on. So does anybody have any questions on any of that or anything that we did today with the orphanage? Does that help any of you guys to understand? You guys are quiet. Does it help you, Josh? Yeah. Does it help you, Steve? Yeah. Help you? Okay. Any help you, Liz? Yeah. Okay. All right. So oftentimes when we think about generosity, we think about just financial, right? But you need to practice your generosity even in the middle way. When you're craving and longing and yearning, if you are excessively practicing generosity, you're not going to be able to meet your basic needs that you need in order to survive and take care of yourself. But if you are all the way over here on the other side where you're never practicing generosity, the mind's going to be quite selfish, right? So you need to come to the middle way, even with something like your generosity, where you're practicing this middle way. And when you're in that middle, that's where you'll feel comfortable. It's almost like the mind has taken a breath of fresh air, right? That middle way is going to change too. Perhaps if somebody was really wealthy, they might be at a period of time in their life where they could share maybe $1,000 a month and maybe 10 hours a week helping an orphanage, right? But now maybe as they age, maybe their parents are getting old, maybe their kids are going to college, maybe their parents are in a senior home or need medical care, and maybe they need to throttle that back. Maybe they can only give $100 a month, and maybe they can only give 1 hour a week to this orphanage, right? So you're going to need to find that middle way and then realize that it's impermanent. It's going to be constantly changing, and you need to be attentive to that in your practice. Okay. So tonight's topic is all about understanding the jhanas. I refer to this as the light bulb is flickering, because what you're going to learn about is these enhanced qualities of mind that are going to be experienced as you're making your way to the first stage of enlightenment. This retreat is all about learning all the teachings that you need to get to the first stage of enlightenment. And up to this point, I've taught what's considered to be the foundational teachings. There's other teachings that you need to learn, but if you're just getting started on the path to enlightenment, then those foundational teachings that I've shared already up to this point, you might just learn those and really get really good at learning those and practicing those. That can take multiple months. You're going to need to actually remember the Eightfold Path. You're going to need to internalize it and remember it. So if somebody came up to you and be like, hey, what did the Buddha teach on right intention? You can say, oh, the intention of renunciation, non-ill will, and harmlessness. Oh, really? He taught right speech too. What was all that about? And like, oh, he taught to eliminate lying, slander, harsh speech, and frivolous speech, right? You should be able to go right through the Eightfold Path, because you're not going to be able to practice it if you haven't internalized it and memorized it. So for some of you guys, you just learned it in this particular retreat. You're going to need to get exposed to that more than one time. There's students who have learned that from me 3, 4, 5, 6, 8, 10 different times, because there's books, there's videos, there's podcasts. You're going to need to internalize that. So for some of you guys, you might just really be working on getting those foundational teachings together, because once you get those foundational teachings together, internalized, and actually practice them on a consistent long-term basis for several months, you're going to start experiencing the jhanas. And when you start experiencing the jhanas, this is like the light bulb is flickering, because you're going to start experiencing enhanced qualities of mind. This is from putting together the Eightfold Path. If you didn't know the Eightfold Path and you weren't practicing it closely, you won't experience the jhanas. But if you're practicing the teachings of the Eightfold Path closely, having memorized them and then practiced them closely for an extended period of time, this is where the mind's going to start moving into the jhanas. And now I'm going to teach you what these enhanced qualities of mind are, because as your mind is starting to experience these enhanced qualities, it's helpful for you to know that that's what's occurring, because your practice is going to pivot. You're no longer going to be focusing on learning and practicing things like the Eightfold Path and the 5 precepts and things like this, because you've already done that. You've already put that together really well. It's already internalized in your mind. You're already practicing it really well. And now your practice is going to pivot, and you're going to start focusing on the 10 fetters, the 10 individual pollutions, which the Eightfold Path and the 5 precepts and all the meditation training and all that kind of stuff is already working to eliminate part of the individual fetters, but you haven't been focusing on them directly yet. With the Eightfold Path and the 5 precepts and meditation training, you're more kind of generally working to eliminate a good amount of kind of generally all the different fetters. But once you start experiencing those enhanced qualities of mind, which are coming about because you've reduced a certain amount of the pollutions in the mind, as you start experiencing those enhanced qualities, now it's like, aha, I've got these foundational teachings really well under my belt. I'm starting to experience these enhanced qualities of mind. Now let me start focusing on the fetters individually. And this is kind of like the bridge, understanding the jhanas. And then after this, what you're going to see me do in the rest of the retreat is I'm going to start teaching you about the individual fetters, because the first 3 fetters need to be eliminated to get to the first stage of enlightenment. I'm going to teach you what is the fetter, what are the symptoms that you're going to experience because of these fetters being in your mind. I'm going to explain to you how to eliminate it, and then I'm going to teach you to understand how to know that you've actually eliminated the fetters. But this is like the bridge, understanding these enhanced qualities of mind, because that's the indication that you then need to start pivoting towards focusing on the individual fetters individually. But for some of you guys, you might just hang out with those foundational teachings for a while. There's no harm in you learning these particular teachings, but just understand that you're probably going to need to spend several months just getting those under your belt first. Okay, so just like always, you guys can ask any and all questions that you like here at the temple using the mics. And those of you guys online, you can use Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom. Put it in the comment section and I'll see that. Or in Zoom, you can raise your hand electronically and ask any questions that you like. Okay, so first, let's talk about what the jhanas are. Can you guys see that? Or is it a little bit blurry? It's a little bit blurry, isn't it? Okay. All right. So first, let's just talk about what the jhanas are so you can understand what they are. I've already been kind of talking about them a little bit, but now let's talk about them in more detail. The word jhana, it's a Pali word. And if this translated to just one English word, I would use it because it's easier for you guys, right? But there's still 2 words that I need to use in Pali, which is the word kamma, which you guys learned about this morning, and the word jhana. These are the only 2 Pali words that I use. Everything else is English, but it doesn't translate to just one English word, so I still need to use the word jhana. What the word jhana means is meditative absorption or mental absorption. And the reason why is that by the time the mind's experiencing the jhanas, you've absorbed mentally a certain amount of the teachings, and you've absorbed a certain amount of meditation. That's how you're going to be able to get into the jhanas, because the mind has absorbed a certain amount of the teachings mentally, and you've absorbed a certain amount of the benefits of meditation through meditating. Okay, so that's what this means. It refers to these deep states in subtle concentration. The mind's going to be relaxed and calm, but yet attentive and alert. This is one of the ways to think about it, is that the mind's going to be relaxed and calm, but yet attentive and alert. But I'm going to go through and explain to you each individual jhana. The way that I think about it is the light bulb is flickering, and it's providing you glimpses of what the enlightened mind is like, because you're starting to get these qualities of the enlightened mind starting to shine through. It's kind of like if there was the sun and then there was clouds in front of that. If you started peeling back the clouds, the rays of the sun are going to start shining through. So those foundational teachings of the Eightfold Path and the 5 precepts and meditation training and all that stuff, as you're doing that, you're working on eliminating the pollution of the mind, of those 10 fetters. And as you're peeling back some of those clouds, the rays of the sun start shining through. When you're in the jhanas, the mind's not fully purified yet. So you don't have all the clouds out of the way, but you have some of that pollution out of the mind. So you start seeing some of the rays of the sun start shining through. So you can experience these temporary periods where you start seeing these heightened qualities of mind starting to peer through because you're starting to get some of this pollution out of the mind. There are 4 preliminary phases that the mind goes through prior to the first stage of enlightenment. And this comes through putting together the Eightfold Path, which includes the 5 precepts. And everybody on their way to the first stage of enlightenment will experience the jhanas. You can't get to the first stage of enlightenment without having experienced the jhanas. You'll hear some people teaching that there's more than 4 jhanas, but this isn't what the Buddha actually taught. I'm going to show you his original words where he taught about the 4 jhanas. There are 4 distinct jhanas, but you'll hear because of impermanence, not everybody's teaching exactly the same thing. Not everybody bases their teachings on the original words of the Buddha. So you'll hear some people teach 8 jhanas or 9 jhanas or other numbers, but you're going to be able to see the original words of the Buddha, and you'll have confidence that he only taught 4 jhanas. And I'm going to show you what each one of them are. These are an indication that you're putting together the steps of the Eightfold Path. Now it's time to start focusing on the 10 fetters more directly, as I was just sharing. And as I mentioned, every practitioner will experience these as part of your progression to the first stage of enlightenment. The jhanas are temporary and they're not meant for the mind to dwell in these phases. Sometimes what happens is when you start experiencing these heightened qualities of the jhanas, people get really bogged down in those jhanas because they start getting obsessed. Am I in the first jhana or second jhana? Am I in the second jhana or the third jhana? They really get obsessed with that. So these jhanas are not meant for your mind to dwell there permanently. They're kind of like a bridge taking you to the stages of enlightenment, and you need to stay focused on the 10 fetters in order to move the mind out of the jhanas and into the first stage of enlightenment. So even though those heightened qualities are quite pleasurable when you're in the jhanas, it's important that you don't cling to this and hold on to it, that you realize that they're temporary and it's important to move through them. The mind can regress out of the jhanas. If you got into the jhanas and you started experiencing these heightened qualities of mind and you became complacent and you stopped practicing, you weren't meditating very much, your mind would actually regress backwards. So while you get into the jhanas and you see these heightened qualities of concentration and calmness and composure and things like this, if you got into the first, second, third, fourth jhana even, and you became complacent and you stopped meditating or you stopped practicing the Eightfold Path, your mind would regress backwards. That's not the case once you get to the first stage of enlightenment. Once you get to the first stage of enlightenment, your mind won't regress backwards. And when you get to enlightenment itself, the 4th stage of enlightenment, your mind won't regress. So in those 4 stages of enlightenment, first, second, third, and fourth, your mind won't regress backwards. If you get into the second, third, or fourth stage of enlightenment, including the first, your mind won't regress backwards. You can't get to the 3rd stage and then end up in the 2nd stage. If you've gotten to the 3rd stage, your mind won't regress backwards. But that's not the case with the jhanas. The mind can regress backwards out of the jhanas. These are improved qualities of mind that you're experiencing at all times during your day. Sometimes people think that you're only experiencing these during meditation. This is a big misunderstanding in the world. If you go out on the internet and you start doing some searches about the jhanas, mostly what you're going to see is people talking about doing meditation to get into the jhanas, or that you're only in the jhana when you're in the meditation. But when you see what the Buddha has to say about this and you hear what I'm teaching you about the jhanas, you're going to be able to see that they're enhanced qualities that you're experiencing at all times during your day. It's not just during meditation, because you wouldn't be able to actually get to the first stage of enlightenment or even enlightenment without those enhanced qualities that you're going to be experiencing. And I'll show you an example of that when we get to it. These jhanas are oftentimes mistaken for enlightenment itself. Because the jhanas are such an improved and enhanced qualities of mind from what somebody experiences when they're off the path to enlightenment, when they get into the jhanas, they oftentimes think they're enlightened. There's people who, when they experience those heightened qualities, not knowing what enlightenment is, not knowing what the jhanas are, they'll think that they're actually enlightened. And because of this, you'll have some people that will tell you that enlightened beings experience sorrow or sadness or frustration or irritation or annoyance or things like this. But I can assure you that an enlightened being doesn't experience any of those things. That by the time you get to enlightenment, you don't experience any anger, sadness, frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety, loneliness, boredom, shyness, resentment, jealousy. All those feelings and others are completely eliminated from the mind. Even the slightest displeasure is eliminated from the mind. You don't even have the slightest ickiness in the mind by the time you get to enlightenment. So if anybody's ever talking about enlightenment and they're talking about those things still exist, they might be experiencing the jhanas, thinking that they're enlightened, and now they're describing what they're experiencing as enlightenment because they're still experiencing sadness and frustration and irritation. They think they're enlightened, but they're describing it as enlightenment. But really, they could be potentially actually in the jhanas. Okay, so this is what the jhanas are. Let's talk about what the jhanas are not, because this is going to help you to understand what the jhanas are, is by understanding what they are not. They're not something to be boastful about or claiming that you have attained a certain jhana. You might talk to your teacher about these kinds of things because you're trying to figure out what the jhanas are and where you're at in your practice so that you can then pivot and start focusing on the 10 fetters. But if you post it on your Facebook page, by the way, I'm on the 2nd jhana, or I'm in the 3rd jhana, or you go to a retreat like this and you pull up to one of your friends and you're like, by the way, I'm in the 4th jhana, right? This is the boastfulness, the conceit, right? You're not interested in that because if you do that, that's going to hinder you from being able to continue your progress on the path to enlightenment. So this isn't something to be boastful about. You're not a special person or anything like that. There's plenty of people in the world that have experienced the jhanas. So no need to be boastful and arrogant about it. It's also not something that's only experienced in meditation. And it's not only meditation that will produce these qualities. If you were only meditating, you would never get to the jhanas. Because if you were meditating, but then you went outside and you were lying, and you were harsh, and you were bitter, and you were stealing, and you were practicing sexual misconduct and things like this, if you were taking substances that cause heedlessness, you're not actually going to get to the jhanas because you need to be able to practice a certain level of moral conduct and other things like this in order to be able to get into the jhanas. Your mind's not going to experience the decreasing of the fetters enough by doing things like stealing and sexual misconduct and lying. You still have a certain level of craving, anger, and ignorance in your mind, and you're not going to experience these mental qualities. So it's not just meditation that's going to lead to these jhanas. You're going to need to be practicing right intention and right speech and right action and right livelihood and even right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. And of course, you're going to need to be practicing right view, where you understand that it's your own mind that's causing these feelings. It's not the outside world that's causing your mind to be angry or frustrated. It's your own mind that's causing these things. So you need more than just meditation. The jhanas aren't something to crave or desire or become obsessed with, because when you hear some of the qualities about the jhanas or even enlightenment itself, sometimes people crave it. They long and yearn for it. And if that's the case, you're not going to be able to experience it. So you're not interested in craving and longing and yearning for it. Understand what these are. Understand this is where you're headed and this is where you would like to get to, but don't crave it and long and yearn for it. But also don't be complacent and over here on the other side and not making wise decisions to work towards it, right? So it's not something to become obsessed about. You'd like to stay focused on the 10 fetters. The jhanas are not enlightenment. As I mentioned, some people think that they're actually enlightened when they experience the jhanas. They are significantly improved qualities of mind, and you're going to be amazed about what your mind has the power to be able to experience when you're in these jhanas. But whatever you're experiencing there, and as significant as it is and as impactful as it is, the mind has much more room to grow. And when you get to enlightenment, you're going to be able to experience that mental state, and it blows away the jhanas. You're not going to even look at the jhanas as like, wow, I got really excited about that. Like, this is so much better. This enlightened mental state is so much better. It's also not something that's mystical or magical or only experienced by special people, or it doesn't determine that you're a special person or anything of that nature. It's just the opposite. It's like through being humble, through training your mind and all these teachings that the Buddha teaches you, that's why you're starting to experience these jhanas. Okay, let's talk about the dangers of the jhanas, because there's some dangers here that you need to be alerted to just so you're aware of them. And then we'll talk about the benefits of the jhanas as well. So the dangers of the jhanas are that due to these drastic improvements to the quality of the mind can actually become conceited and boastful and arrogant. And if this is the case, then you're going to get bogged down in those jhanas, or your mind's actually going to even regress out of them. So that's why if you're noticing any conceit coming into the mind, you would like to stomp that out and get rid of it. Because as you're getting that enhanced qualities of mind, like concentration and calmness and equanimity, you're going to notice other people around you are really struggling. And if that conceit or arrogance or boastfulness comes into the mind, it's going to keep you bogged down, and you're not going to be able to keep your forward progress. The mind can become complacent when it gets into the jhanas because it's experiencing those improved qualities of mind, and it can be like, this is great, man. I've been working for this. Wow. Let me kick back and relax. Like, wow, I really like these qualities of the jhanas. So you're not interested in becoming complacent in the jhanas. Instead, realize that there's more for you to go, more room to grow. You're just really getting started when you get into the jhanas. That's just like the first indication that you're starting to put together the Eightfold Path. So don't allow the mind to get complacent when it's in those jhanas. With the complacency, the mind can regress out of the jhanas, as I mentioned. It can actually go backwards. There can be overwhelming excitement and joy when the mind is in the jhanas, and it can be a challenge to restrain the mind. You can be experiencing certain day-to-day things in life, and you can notice this excitement and joy springing up in the mind. And normally, in some places, people think that excitement and joy is good, right? Well, what you would like to get to is the unconditioned joy, the unconditioned happiness. If you allow your mind to get conditional happiness, that means it's going to arise, it's going to change, and it's going to fade away. And your mind's ultimately going to end up in the painful feelings. So if you allow your mind to get so excited because we're going to the orphanage, then when you don't go, or maybe they weren't home when we got there, then you'll be disappointed. Or if you get so excited because of that mango and sticky rice that you had yesterday, when you go there today and they don't have it and they're all out, you'll get frustrated or agitated. So whenever you see conditional pleasant feelings, you would like to cut those off and let them go. You need to be willing to let go of this temporary happiness in order to get to the permanent happiness, the unconditioned happiness. Okay, so when you see this overwhelming excitement and joy coming into the mind can lack full discipline, and it can kind of go off in this excited state. And you would like to bring the mind down with tranquility and concentration and equanimity. And you like to bring the mind into the middle, applying right effort to be able to do that. You might notice that the mind can swing. This is something that happens when it's in the jhanas. It can kind of swing back and forth between happiness and excitement over to sadness and other kind of painful feelings. It can kind of swing pretty quickly because the mind's kind of unraveling a little bit. It's kind of like if you have that toy where it has the spring snakes and you put them in the can and you twist the top on. If you untwist it, they just kind of pop out. This is kind of what sometimes happens when the mind is experiencing the jhanas. It kind of swings back and forth like this. So you're going to need to build in some more discipline and stay disciplined so that as you see your mind swinging like that, you can get it to the point where it's stable and steady. Right? So these are just things that you'll experience, but if you're paying attention to your mind and you're training your mind, you can stabilize the mind here. These aren't permanent. You can notice significant amounts of energy or energy surges that will occur where you can just kind of be like dull and lethargic, and you can just get this sudden energy to want to run out and go do a whole bunch of things. So if you're noticing this is an indication that the mind is in the jhanas too. And what you would like to be able to do is calm that down and not to give in to those surges that the mind wants to surge forward. Okay. Some benefits of the jhanas. These are an indication that you've developed the Eightfold Path and you're moving in the right direction towards enlightenment. When you see certain enhanced qualities, and we haven't talked about the enhanced qualities yet, but when you see them, this is an indication to you that you've putting together the foundational teachings really well. These improved qualities of mind are actually needed in order for you to move forward and progress on the Eightfold Path. You're going to see the enhanced qualities that I talk about. You wouldn't be able to progress without these qualities that are experienced in the jhanas. one of the qualities that you'll experience is that the subconscious mind has been eliminated by the time you get to the second jhana. You'll have full awareness of the entire mind. The way that this works is your conscious mind are the things that you're aware of in your own mind. But then prior to the second jhana, you have a subconscious mind. Both of these are polluted in the unenlightened state, but the subconscious mind is more heavily polluted than the conscious mind. If you've ever been around people before and you just kind of blurted something out and you were like, that's not how I think. That's not the way I think. Like, where did that come from? Maybe you blurted out something racist or derogatory or something like this. And you're like, that's not the way I think. I don't think that way. That's your subconscious mind throwing things up into your conscious mind. And now you just blurted it out. In order to get to enlightenment, you're going to need to have full awareness of your entire mind. You're going to need to purify the entire mind. So if there's a conscious mind and then there's a subconscious mind that you're not aware of, you're not going to be able to purify your mind completely. So you're going to need to have full awareness of the entire mind. So one of the things that you're going to notice with the second jhana is that there's oneness of mind, or there's unification of the mind, where you no longer have a conscious and subconscious mind. It's just one mind, and you have full awareness of the entire mind. And that's one of the benefits of getting into the jhanas. There's cultivation of deep wisdom for continued growth and development on the path to enlightenment. Some people refer to this as the opening of the third eye, or the inner eye, or the divine eye, because as you're moving into the jhanas, the mind becomes very introspective, particularly in that second jhana. You become very introspective, where you look inward and you can see things about your own mind and your own life that you didn't see before. In fact, people can become very emotional in the jhanas because they look at their life and they can see how they've been making all these unwise decisions throughout their life. Because with the ego in place, you might think that what you've been doing in life has been so wonderful and so great and everybody else is the problem. But what you're going to start to be able to see is that you've been making lots of unwise decisions in your life through your relationships and the things that you've been doing from day to day. And when you get into these jhanas, you're going to have enough wisdom to be able to see that, and you're going to have more introspection where you can see that you've been making a lot of unwise decisions. Doesn't mean other people around you aren't making unwise decisions, but as long as that ego is intact, you're going to think that you're so great and everybody else is the problem. But as you start peering into the mind and you start dissolving some of these pollutions, you're going to start seeing more and more of the difficulties and struggles that you've been encountering and how these have been self-imposed, that it's not other people that's causing these difficulties and struggles in your life. It's your own decisions that are leading to these kinds of things. And then you'll have wisdom in understanding wholesome and unwholesome things and wise and unwise things to help you with improved decision-making beyond what you currently understand when you were off the path to enlightenment, or even when you first got on the path to enlightenment. By the time you get to the jhanas, you will have cultivated a certain amount of wisdom about what is wise and unwise and wholesome and unwholesome. And you'll be able to more readily even make friends and select people like a life partner, or select a job that you would like to work at, or a certain place where you would like to live and things like this. You'll have more wisdom to make choices about where you live, where you work, the types of friends that you have, these kinds of things. And this is what's leading to your improvements in your day-to-day life, because you're now starting to make more and more decisions through the natural laws, through your wisdom, rather than just, oh, that looks like a pretty house, I'll buy that house, or I'll rent that apartment, or, oh, that person looks attractive, let me be friends with them, or, oh, they've got a lot of money, let me be friends with them. You're going to be making decisions differently, not based on those kinds of things. When you're forming friendships, you're choosing where to work, you're choosing where to live, and things like this. Okay, so these are some of the benefits. Discontentedness will be reduced, but not fully eliminated when you get into the jhanas. You're going to notice this decrease of discontentedness. Not as much as when you get to the first stage of enlightenment, but there is a decrease of discontentedness when you get into the jhanas. So you're not going to have that extreme rage and anger. You're not going to have that extreme happiness and excitement. Your mind's going to come in more to the middle a bit. So there's not going to be this significant discontentedness. It's been reduced, but not eliminated. You're going to have more calmness and composure that is readily available and easily practiced, where you'll be able to easily practice calmness and composure in your day-to-day life, where something can happen that other people might be uncalm and shaken up by, where you can just be completely calm and steady. You're going to have more awareness of this interconnectivity of all beings in the world. Not that we are physically connected. It's not that our consciousnesses are connected. It's that you just can see how your decisions impact other people. You're going to be able to see this interconnectivity. You're going to see how other people's decisions impact other people. So you're going to see this interconnectivity about this sequence of events of cause and effect, cause and effect, cause and effect. You're going to see this interconnectivity between all beings. Smiling becomes a lot easier, and you'll have a more cheerful disposition. Your mind's going to be a bit more uplifted when you're in the jhanas. You'll notice that. You'll be able to more easily communicate and interact with others in the world. This is something that you experience when you're in the jhanas. You'll notice that you'll have easier ability to develop relationships, choosing wholesome friends and wholesome companions, because you'll realize how important that is. You're not interested in judging other people. That's not what the Buddha would have ever taught, but you would like to look at certain qualities of how people are making decisions, right? You can love all beings, but realize it's wise to be with people who are making wise decisions. Like you'll choose to distance yourself from people who are doing unwise things because you know that that's unwise for you to do those things. Like if someone was killing or stealing or having sexual misconduct or lying or taking substances that cause heedlessness, you know that that would impact you in a negative way. And if you chose to be friends with individuals who are doing these kinds of things, it would cause impact to you. Not that you're judging these people or looking down on them or thinking of them in a negative way, but you'll just understand through these natural laws of cause and effect that if you choose to associate in these kinds of environments with people making decisions in this way, that is going to impact you. But by this time, it'll make it easier for you to develop wholesome relationships because you'll have more wisdom about how to do that in a way that you're not judging others, but you're just making wise decisions about the types of relationships that you form. Okay, so what I'd like to do is pause here. After this, I'm going to share with you the words of the Buddha about the jhanas so you can see what he taught, and then I'm going to break it down and teach you what are the benefits and what are the enhanced qualities that you're going to be experiencing in each individual jhanas. So do you guys have any questions on what I've shared so far? Remember, those of you guys online, you can put that on Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, or you can raise your hand in Zoom and ask any questions that you like. Okay, looks like Janae has a question. Go ahead, ma'am.
So I have a couple questions. The first one is...
we're having a little bit of challenge to hear you, Janae. Your mic's not quite so loud.
Can you hear me better?
That's a little bit better.
You really can't hear me?
There we go. It's starting to come through now.
Is the light bulb flickering the same exact thing as the jhana itself, or is it just a result of the jhana?
It's the jhana itself. It's because the mind has eliminated, or I should say the mind has reduced a certain amount of the pollutions, the qualities are starting to shine through. So I refer to that as the light bulb flickering. And that's experiencing some of the enhanced qualities as your mind's moving into these jhanas.
Okay. And then my other questions are, like, how much time and energy would you suggest looking into the jhanas specifically to make sure that you don't get like hung up on them?
Sure. It's wise to first start off with learning the core central teachings. That's what I was sharing at the beginning, that understanding the Eightfold Path, making sure you have that committed to memory and you're starting to practice that. And not just the Eightfold Path, but all the connected teachings, like the Four Noble Truths, the Three Universal Truths, the 5 Precepts, meditation training, the natural law of Karma, all those kinds of things. And what is merit? I didn't get a chance to teach that to you guys yet because we ran over a little bit this morning, but you're going to need to know these foundational teachings and have them committed to memory. So you would like to focus on that first. Once you've got that really well under your belt and you have memorized that, sometimes what students like to do is they like to schedule appointments with me, either online or in person, and they like to kind of almost like they're teaching me. They're going to say, David, this is what right view is, and they'll explain it. And then they'll say, this is right intention, and they'll explain it. And then I can help them to make sure they've got it tightened up so that they definitely have confidence in their mind that they understand the Eightfold Path. So once somebody gets the core central teachings understood and committed to memory, and now they're practicing those readily, and now what you would like to be doing at this time is start to just generally understand what the jhanas are. And this thing that I'm going to show you next, this, once you learn what the words of the Buddha are, and then you see how I've broken it down, you would like to learn that slide so that you know what the qualities of the jhanas are. So I'll show you here, and then I'll just back up. You'd like to know this particular slide, because this is what's going to teach you what the jhanas are, and they're going to be an indication for you so that you'll know when your mind is in those jhanas. So you'd like to just know what those things are, so that then when you start experiencing those qualities, you'll know, aha, this is the jhanas.
Okay. And then my last question is the Eightfold Path like the determining factor of which jhana you're in?
It doesn't determine which jhana you're in, but that's the foundational teaching that's going to lead to the jhanas. What's going to determine what jhana you're in is these qualities that your mind's going to be experiencing. So this is almost like a personal growth plan, that when you see that you're hitting these mile markers, right? They're like mile markers. They're indicators that because you've put together the Eightfold Path really well, your mind's now going to start moving through the jhanas. And that's why it doesn't make sense to get obsessed about the individual jhanas, because let's just say you're in the second jhana and you would like to get to the third jhana. There's nothing different that you need to do other than just keep focusing on the Eightfold Path and now pivot towards the fetters. So if you work on the Eightfold Path and get that underway, you'll start experiencing eventually these jhanas, and they're just enhanced qualities that you're experiencing. But it's not the Eightfold Path that's determining which jhana you're in. Is the mind experiencing these mile markers? Is it experiencing these enhanced qualities? But moving from the second jhana to the third jhana, for example, there's nothing about your practice that is going to change. It's just continuing to do the same things, which is the Eightfold Path and all those other connected teachings, and continuing to now pivot towards the fetters and starting to eliminate the first, second, and third fetter.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Yes, sir.
So when I hear about the dangers, it makes me think of like being bipolar or having mania or depression or something like that. Or is it seems like you're feeling manic, but you need to be careful of that? Is that?
It's exactly what it is. Yeah. And that's what those individuals are actually experiencing. Their mind is starting to unravel on them, and they don't have the discipline to be able to control it. So oftentimes people think that bipolar is a biological disorder. It's actually not. It's the mind is untrained. It's starting to get into these jhanas, and it doesn't know how to get the control because the mind hasn't been trained. So typically what people do that are experiencing those kinds of symptoms, they will typically turn to things like drugs or alcohol or sex or gambling or unwise things like this in order to bring their mind out of the jhanas and get down to something that feels somewhat comfortable, because being in those jhanas, it doesn't feel comfortable for them to be there. So that's why you need to be aware of this. Not that you're going to not that that's a permanent mental state, but when your mind starts experiencing that swinging like that, you just need to be able to understand like, this is the jhanas. Let me start really focusing on my meditation, paying a lot of attention to the Eightfold Path so that I can stabilize the mind here and just keep on moving through these jhanas. So it's just something that can occur. It's not permanent. It's not like it's going to, throw you off for weeks and weeks and weeks. It's just something that can occur. And when you're noticing it, you would like to just, continue to be consistent with your practice. But that's exactly what it is.
And so if you're thinking about it as like, it's not something that applies to people with manic depression. If they're experiencing that, but they're not following the Eightfold Path, are they related or unrelated? How would that work?
Yeah, so somebody can actually stumble into these jhanas without actually realizing it. You won't stumble into the first stage of enlightenment or the second, third, or fourth stage of enlightenment, but you can stumble into these jhanas. I've had many students over the years that they weren't students yet. They were just contacting me. They're like, hey, I experienced this thing 5 years ago. Here's what I experienced. And it was only for 3 weeks. And then, I stopped meditating, and then I didn't experience that anymore. And I've always wanted to get back to that. And I don't know what that was and how to get back to it. Right. And this is what was happening, is they kind of stumbled into the jhanas and they started experiencing those qualities, but they didn't know what they were and they didn't know how to move past them. So their mind regressed and went out of it. So this is what people are experiencing. So when they stumble into the jhanas, a person who's labeled as bipolar, that's what's happening, is they're kind of stumbling into the jhanas. And because they don't have that moral conduct really well understood in the wisdom, they don't have the mental discipline in that wisdom section of the Eightfold Path, they're trying to get back to something that feels somewhat comfortable. And typically what Western medicine will do is they'll put you on medications, and then that'll kind of numb the mind, and it'll bring you down out of the jhanas, and now they're kind of trapped in that particular mental state, rather than getting rid of that stuff, allowing them to learn how to train their mind and stabilize their mind and move past the jhanas into the first stage of enlightenment by learning the wisdom of the wisdom section, moral conduct section, and mental discipline section.
Thanks.
Just from not having a well-developed practice is what's happening. Because these teachings aren't taught in the West. Right here in Thailand, they don't have a big mental health issue, right? They don't have lots of people on medications. It's just not that way because you grow up understanding these teachings. They do have that stuff here, and it's available for people because in acute situations, you might need that kind of stuff. But very rarely do those things happen because people grow up with this wisdom, this moral conduct, and this mental discipline. But in the West, we don't have that wisdom, the moral conduct, and the mental discipline. So we're experiencing all kinds of difficulties with mental health in Western countries. Okay, no more questions? All right, so now these are the words of the Buddha on the jhanas. He teaches this in the Eightfold Path under right concentration, but he also teaches it in other places too. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to read these words to you, and then I'm going to break it down for you so you can see what he's talking about here. He describes it as right concentration in the Eightfold Path because it's the Eightfold Path that you need in order to experience these qualities. That's why when I taught you the Eightfold Path, when I said, okay, let me teach you how to practice right concentration, I didn't read this. I just showed you how to practice right concentration. But now I'm going to read this to you and help you to understand it through breaking it down. Okay, so here's what he's describing as the enhanced qualities of the mind having put together the Eightfold Path. In what, monks, is right concentration? Here, a monk, distant from sense desires, distant from unwholesome mental states, enters and resides in the first jhana, which is with thinking and pondering, based in seclusion, filled with excitement and joy. And with the subsiding of thinking and pondering, by gaining inner tranquility and oneness of mind, he enters and resides in the second jhana, which is without thinking and pondering, based in concentration, filled with excitement and joy. And with the fading away of excitement, remaining imperturbable, which means unable to be upset or excited, calm and serene. Mindful and clearly aware, he experiences in himself the joy of which the noble ones say, peaceful is he who resides with equanimity and mindfulness. He enters the third jhana. And having given up pleasure and pain, and with the fading away of former gladness and sadness, he enters and resides in the fourth jhana, which is beyond pleasure and pain, and purified by equanimity and mindfulness. This is called right concentration. So this is him describing the jhanas. Generally, you can think of the jhanas as the mind being relaxed and calm, but yet attentive and alert. This is a general way to think about it, but this is the detail that he's talking about. And this is occurring through having absorbed a certain amount of meditation and a certain amount of mental absorption of the actual teachings themselves. So now here's the jhanas with all those connecting words taking out of it. And I'm going to walk you through and help you understand this. The first jhana is where an individual has distanced themselves from sensual desire, meaning you're probably not as interested in that beer and that wine anymore. You're probably not as interested in, certain pleasures of the senses. What we mean by the senses is the eyes, the ears, the nose, the tongue, the body, and the mind itself. That the mind is longing, yearning through sensual desire for these things. And there are certain pleasures that the mind wants. The mind wants to be permanently comfortable. It's chasing those pleasant feelings. So there's certain central desires that the mind longs and yearns for. A good example of this is like when we were children, we really thought ice cream and chocolate was the best thing ever. If we could have ice cream and chocolate in a given day, oh my goodness, it was the best day ever, right? And if we could have it 3 times a day, oh my goodness, that was like the best day. But as we age, we're like, chocolate and ice cream is nice, but it's not really something that we gravitate towards. We'll have it every once in a while, but we're not enamored with it in the way that we were when we were a child. So we start to distance ourselves from these central desires, because by the time you're learning and practicing the Eightfold Path and putting that together well, you will start to see the truth that these central desires are actually leading to your painful feelings. That as long as you're chasing after that pleasure, the pain is waiting for you right around the corner. If you allow the mind to get all the pleasure when you see the sun, well, when it rains, the painful feelings are waiting for you, the sadness and the anger. If you allow your mind to get so excited with that brand new job that you just got, well, 6 months later, you're going to experience the sadness and the frustration when they lay you off, or the company downsizes, or they fire you, or something like this. So you'll start to see this connection between the conditioned pleasant feelings that lead to the conditioned painful feelings. And because the mind sees this more clearly, it starts to distance itself from central desires. That's not to say that you're not going to experience any pleasure when your mind's in these jhanas and your mind is actually enlightened. It just means that you see the problem of conditional pleasure, that when the mind is experiencing conditional pleasure, that the conditional pain is waiting right around the corner. Because if you allow your mind to get these conditional pleasant feelings, the painful feelings are waiting right around the corner. Because if I base my pleasure on some condition, that condition is impermanent. It's going to change. So that means when that condition changes, I can't experience the pleasure anymore. Now the mind's experiencing the pain. So you start noticing that connection more and more closely. So you start distancing yourself from these central desires. Then you distance yourself from unwholesome mental states. You start to realize this anger is not serving any helpful purpose. This frustration and agitation isn't helping you. This guilt and shame and fear and all these other unwholesome qualities of the mind, you start to distance yourself from this. You realize that it's unwise for you to go around with this anger and frustration, right? It's not going to help you in any situation. So that's that first line. Then you're going to notice this thinking and pondering. What this means is that prior to the jhanas, and prior to the path to enlightenment, we're just out in the world haphazardly making decisions, and it's almost like plowing through the forest, knocking down the trees and burning up the forest, because we don't really have any wisdom about the natural laws. So we're just going around the world chasing after our cravings, desires, attachments. We want that pleasure. We might be out there at the nightclub at 2 a.m., smoking some marijuana. We might be using some alcohol. We might be out there having sex with lots of different people. We're just out there having all kinds of pleasures because we don't understand the natural laws and the harms that we're doing. But by the time you get to understanding the Eightfold Path, and that's well under your belt, and you've been practicing it for a period of time, by the time you get to this first jhana, you start thinking and pondering, meaning any situation that you're in or any situation that you're experiencing, you start contrasting that to the teachings, rather than just plowing through life haphazardly without trying to think about your decision making. You start to understand by this point, any decision that you make, it's going to produce a result. If you make decisions wisely, it's going to produce wholesome results. If you make decisions unwisely, it's going to produce unwholesome results. So you now start thinking and pondering about the teachings and related to any situation that you're in. So rather than just haphazardly going through life, you start thinking about, my wife's angry at me. She wanted me to take out the trash. She's really craving something there. What's the best way to do this? I know I'm not going to go yell at her. I'm not going to do that. I should probably go use some right speech. You know what? Maybe I'll practice some generosity. I know she likes avocados. Maybe I'll go to the market and get her some avocados, right? You start thinking about how can I practice here in a way that resolves this situation. She's angry at me for not taking out the trash. I know that's her craving that's causing it. I'm not causing her anger, but let me figure out a way to talk to her in a way that's going to help her here. So you start thinking and pondering about these things, right? My neighbor's playing loud music at 2 a.m. I know running over there and pounding on the door and yelling and hollering at them is unwise. That's not going to solve anything at all. What should I do here? You know what? I'm just going to try to get some sleep, and I'm going to talk to them tomorrow. And I'm going to maybe bring them some chocolate and try to see if I can have a conversation with them about this music, right? You start thinking and pondering about the teachings and all the factors and trying to figure out how to actually solve the day-to-day challenges. And this is how you're actually cultivating wisdom in your mind, that you're not just haphazardly going through life. You're thinking and pondering about the teachings. You're using them in certain situations, and now it helps you to bring more wisdom on board within your mind, so that the next time you're in that situation, you see like, wow, that worked before. So now let me just do the same thing I did before, because that worked before. So now it will work again. So you start thinking and pondering, and you really are cultivating a lot of wisdom here about these natural laws. You'll notice that you're filled with excitement and joy. The excitement is the conditional excitement. The mind is experiencing conditional pleasant feelings. The joy is the unconditioned joy, where there's no condition that's causing it. So the mind kind of goes back and forth between this conditional excitement in some situations, but then you start to see some unconditioned joy kind of coming through in the mind. This is the first jhana. The second jhana, you start subsiding the thinking and pondering. It's still there. You're still experiencing the thinking and pondering, but it starts to subside a bit because you've been doing a lot of that in that first jhana. You might have been in that first jhana for a good 6 months or a year, perhaps, right? Maybe even longer, where you're doing a lot of thinking and pondering. But now, because you have so much wisdom on board, that thinking and pondering starts to subside a little bit. The mind can almost feel like it's obsessively thinking about the teachings when it's in that first jhana. But the second jhana, that starts to subside a little bit. You start noticing this inner tranquility, this calmness of mind. And then this is where you experience the oneness of mind, or the unification of the mind, where there's no longer a conscious mind and a subconscious mind, but this has all become one now, where you have full awareness of the entire mind. And this is where you can see that the qualities of the jhanas aren't just experienced in meditation. This is something that you're experiencing all day long, that you have this unification of the mind. So there's this tranquility and this calmness, this peacefulness in the mind that wasn't there before. And you now have this oneness of mind, this full awareness of the entire mind. There's no longer a conscious and subconscious mind. You're going to notice that there's more concentration, more focus, more clarity in the mind. And now, by the time you're starting to move out of that second jhana, that's where the thinking and pondering stops, that you don't have this obsessive thinking and pondering anymore. You're still going to be thinking about the teachings every now and then. You haven't cultivated all the wisdom that you need about the teachings, but it's just not so obsessively thinking about this, because you've got a significant amount of wisdom under your belt. And you still got this filled with excitement and joy, still experiencing that conditional excitement and still experiencing this unconditioned joy. The conditional excitement is starting to diminish, and the unconditional joy is starting to expand more and more. You're starting to notice that in more duration, where before it might have just been a few seconds or a few minutes. Now it's starting to last for longer and longer periods of time of this unconditioned joy. The third jhana, this is where there's the fading away of excitement. What we're talking about here is conditional excitement. That's that conditional pleasant feeling. That starts to fade away. And you become imperturbable, where the mind can't be upset and it can't be excited, meaning conditional excitement. It doesn't mean you're feeling numb. Sometimes when I describe this, people think like, oh, you must feel so numb, I can't get to the excitement. But what you're used to in the unenlightened state is chasing those cravings, desires, attachments. You're thinking like, that excitement is what I live for. But that's kind of like the drug. That's kind of like the high that the mind keeps chasing after. So you're getting rid of this conditional excitement, and the unconditioned joy starting to come through more and more, where you're just sitting there looking at the sky and your mind's so joyful. You don't need anything to feel the joy. It's just joyful all the time. So that's what you're going to get to when you get to enlightenment, where it's joyful all the time. But here you're noticing more and more amounts of that joy starting to come through. And that's where the Buddha is saying here, experiencing joy. because there's more and more unconditioned joy coming through. That conditional excitement is going down and down and down. You're going to notice that there's mindfulness, which is awareness of mind, where the mind's more clearly aware. You're more with it, where you're not having that blank space, where if you're talking and you're like, what was I going to say again? What was I going to say? I can't remember. Oh my goodness. It was right on the tip of my tongue. What was I going to say? You're going to have less and less of those kinds of situations because you're fully aware of your mind. You have clear awareness of your mind. You're not going to have those blanks in your mind. And then you'll notice that the mind is peacefully residing with equanimity and mindfulness. What equanimity is calmness and composure, even in difficult situations where the mind can be calm and composed. The opposite of that would be like you get a phone call that your mom's been in a terrible car accident and she's in the back of an ambulance being rushed to the hospital, and you go crazy. You're like, oh my goodness, where's my keys? Let me get in the car. Let me bolt across town. That's the mind being shaken up because of your attachment to your mom. You're craving, you're desiring, you're wanting your mom to be permanently safe and permanently healthy. And it's just not possible. Your mom's going to experience some sickness because her body is impermanent. But with the mind craving permanence, when you get that news, your mind can easily be shaken up. And the last thing you're interested in doing is bolting across town and showing up the hospital with an uncalm mind, because now you might get in a car accident yourself, or at the very least, you're going to show up at the hospital with an uncalm mind, and when the doctors and nurses are trying to talk to you about what's going on, you're not going to be able to comprehend it, and you're not going to be able to make wise decisions that are going to help your mom. So by the time you get into the third jhana, you're going to notice this equanimity, this calmness and composure in all situations. It doesn't matter what's going on. The mind can be calm and composed. Evenness of temper. Even if you get a phone call that your mom is in a terrible car accident, you'd be able to stay calm and you'd be able to make your way to the hospital and make wise decisions. And then there's mindfulness there. That's that awareness of mind. And more specifically, those 4 foundations of mindfulness: the bodily sensations, the feelings, the condition of the mind, and the mental objects. We talked about this yesterday, where you're developing awareness of these 4 things. Now in the 4th jhana, the mind has given up pleasure and pain. What this means is that you've already seen the dangers in conditional pleasant feelings. You've already seen the dangers in the conditional painful feelings and how the mind's going up and down and up and down, and you've given up on that. And you're like, you know what? I'm not chasing those pleasant feelings anymore. The mind is still doing it to a certain degree, but your mind has made a switch that you've realized, this is unwise. I'm not going to be doing this anymore, right? So the mind's given up on chasing after these pleasant feelings because it knows the painful feelings are waiting right around the corner. So the mind's still experiencing conditional pleasant feelings and conditional painful feelings to a certain degree, but it's no longer actively chasing them. It's given up on this chase. The mind experiences the fading away of the former gladness and sadness. This is the conditional feelings, right? It's starting to fade away because the mind's made that switch. The mind is now beyond this pleasure and pain, no longer chasing the pleasant feelings and painful feelings. It's now beyond that and is starting to make its way towards the permanent peace and the permanent joy. The mind still has the equanimity, the calmness and composure, evenness of temper, especially in difficult situations, and it has this mindfulness or this awareness of mind. This has been fully developed. By the time you get to the 4th jhana, you fully develop the 4 foundations of mindfulness. So if you don't even know what the 4 foundations of mindfulness are, you're not in the 4th jhana yet, right? So you need to know what they are, and you need to be practicing them readily. Okay, so any questions on any of these 4 jhanas? Anything you guys would like to ask? Yes, go for it, guys. Luca.
So it is possible that we've experienced kind of getting in and out, like you said, in like a week or a month or so.
Mm-hmm.
So could they be kind of mixed? So there is like one part, for example, this joy to be present,
Mm-hmm.
but at the same time there is a strong desire for something else. So it's kind of like not going from first to fourth, but kind of like being one another and like jumping between them.
Yeah.
And it was associated with a lot of meditation.
Yeah, that's not possible. But what is possible and what you might be thinking about is that you can be, say, in the first jhana, but your mind is starting to experience some of the qualities of the third and the fourth. But that it's not firmly in the third and fourth jhana. It's firmly in the first jhana, but you're starting to see some of the qualities of the others starting to peer through.
That is what I was trying to ask. Yes. So okay, good. Is there a way to distinguish one from another? Because some of them are kind of vaguely defined, at least the way I understand. For example, the second is subsiding thinking and pondering, and then I guess toward the end is without thinking and pondering.
One of the big indications of getting into the first jhana is this filled with excitement and joy in the thinking and pondering, as well as distancing yourself from the sensual desires in the unwholesome mental states. The thinking and pondering is quite noticeable because the mind almost becomes obsessive about the teachings, kind of looking at every little thing. Not feverishly, but the mind just is constantly thinking about the teachings in every little aspect of your life. So that's a big indication that your mind's in the first jhana, and you'll notice that excitement and joy. The big indication that you're in the second jhana is the unification of the mind, that you now have full awareness of the entire mind. There isn't these hidden thoughts and this subconscious mind that you're not aware of, that you have full awareness of the entire mind. Indication for the third jhana is where the mind is now experiencing all that unconditional joy that becomes more and more significant, experiencing the unconditioned joy, and the mind being imperturbable, that it's not able to be upset or excited. And you're going to notice this for multiple months. It's not just one day, right? It's multiple months that you're noticing this, that you just aren't excited. You're bouncing off the wall, but you're also not upset either, right? You're not having this deep sadness and being upset with people. You understand what you're experiencing because of your cravings, desires, attachments. The indication for the fourth jhana is that this equanimity is fully developed. There's significant calmness and composure in the mind, and the mindfulness, the four foundations of mindfulness are well understood and being well practiced.
Okay, cool, thanks.
Mm-hmm. Yes, sir.
So from my understanding and from how I learned the jhanas was that it was achieved only through meditation. So you said that was incorrect?
Yes, that's true.
So why do people, when they meditate and focus on an object like the breath, do they experience like the senses disappearing and the breath disappearing and like extreme bliss?
It's just qualities that they're experiencing. It's not just during meditation, though, that the jhanas are being experienced. You can experience some of the qualities of the jhanas while you're meditating, but it's not just during meditation that you're experiencing those qualities. So if an individual is only experiencing those qualities during meditation, their mind's not in the jhanas yet, because these qualities are going to be all throughout your day.
So is it more common to first experience the jhanas through meditation and then experience them throughout the day, or just throughout the day just randomly start noticing these qualities?
You can have major shifts while you're in meditation, where the mind has these shifts, and then some people think that that's them entering a jhana, and they'll say, "Oh, I entered the jhana on January 3rd at 4:05 a.m. or something like this," right? And that's not the way that these jhanas work. But oftentimes with the conceit and the arrogance and the pride, I've seen Facebook posts where people are like, "I entered the second jhana on this date at this time. I was in this location with these people," but that's not the way these work. There's not going to be a hard switch. It's not, even though we call it enlightenment, it's not a light switch that you're turning on and off. These qualities of the jhanas start to gradually start to appear in the mind. And then eventually the mind's firmly in that jhana because you see these qualities for an extended period of time. So when you're in the meditation, you can experience some of these qualities, but if the mind's not fully experiencing it all through your day, the mind's not firmly in that jhana.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Yep. Feel free to go ask questions. I think this lady in front of you, Robert, had a question. Did you have a question? Yeah.
So after you experience unconditional joy in the meditation, then you sometimes will get addicted to doing meditations and you just don't want to get out to real life because you will feel like for a period of time, I have experienced a lot of joy in my meditation. So I was doing very long time meditations every day and I did not want to get out from there. So that's causing a problem that I do not really want to deal with problems in reality. And then it just didn't continue.
Okay.
Like how, what should we do in this condition to keep the joy, to like shift it from meditation to real life?
The first step is understanding these jhanas and understanding that it's unwise to cling to any of these qualities. That's why I talked about that, because of that exact thing that you just said that can occur, that once you start experiencing these qualities, the mind can cling to it. So that's why I taught that. So you need to know the wisdom to not allow the mind to cling to it. That's the first thing. The second thing is if you notice the mind is starting to cling to it and you're working with someone like me, what I would have told you to do is start skipping your meditation. And I know that sounds strange for a teacher to tell you that, but if you're noticing that you're clinging and holding on to your meditation, I would have suggested that you do meditation one day and you skip it the next day, and then you do it the next day and then you skip it, because this is going to train your mind to understand the impermanent nature of this meditation. And then after you do that for like 2 or 3 weeks, then you can get back to your regular schedule because you would have eliminated your attachment to the meditation by that point.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Yeah, I have heard of people of the term like jhana junkies, people that get so sort of excited by going through this process that they just want to be there all the time. But when I look at them the way they're laid out here, I mean, I know the answer that you're going to say, but I'm wondering how attainable this is for the lay person, because it feels somewhat at the moment, it feels far away for me.
Yeah, it's very attainable, not just these jhanas, but enlightenment itself. Oftentimes people have been taught that only ordained practitioners can get to enlightenment. This isn't actually true. Sometimes people think that household practitioners can only get to the first stage of enlightenment. This isn't actually true. So when an individual lacks wisdom of the Eightfold Path, and having studied with the original words of the Buddha, when someone lacks wisdom of the jhanas, when they lack wisdom of the 4 stages of enlightenment, it can seem really far away because they haven't studied it, they don't understand it, and it can seem really far away. And you come from a culture where this wisdom isn't permeating in day-to-day life. But now you're in a place where this wisdom is permeating, right? And now you can hear from someone that says, yes, this is very obtainable. I have students that get to this within 3-6 months sometimes because they're studying with the original words of the Buddha. It has nothing to do with me as a teacher. It's because they're getting the original words of the Buddha. And that makes all the difference in the world. When you're not studying with the original words of the Buddha, which is the vast majority of the world, this seems very far away. But when you start learning with his true teachings, you can see it's very, very achievable.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Yes, sir.
So you were talking about manic depression and stuff like that, and you talked about medication. So inconveniently, I have a seizure disorder, and the medication is one that also is used for manic depression to obviously control your mind. Does that make this sustainable, or does it just make it more difficult?
I don't know 100%. I would have to talk with you about the medication and see what the effects that it has. But I don't see why you wouldn't be able to attain this after spending time with you and being around you. You may even already be in some of these jhanas. I'm not sure. We'd have to talk in more detail. You would know perhaps after this description, but I don't see why that medication would hinder you, because I've been around you and I see the quality of your mind, and I don't think that it would. But we could talk about it, and I could understand more about the medication and what it's actually doing by doing a little bit of research.
Yeah, it's just helpful to see how Western philosophies of healthcare with the Eastern philosophies of mindfulness.
Yeah. Western medicine has really helped us tremendously in the world, right? And without it, we wouldn't be able to experience a lot of the things that we experience. And even psychotropic medications can be really helpful in acute situations. If anybody's familiar with like a psychosis and what that is, there's no amount of Four Noble Truths and Eightfold Path and meditation that's going to help somebody get out of a psychosis, right? You need that medication to help you get out of that. But then once the mind gets out of that, now it's time to start learning and stabilizing the mind with teachings like this.
Thanks.
Mm-hmm. Is there other questions? Yep.
Just clarification again, if you don't mind, the difference between third and fourth particular. Am I understanding correctly that the fourth is then willingly giving up pleasure and pain, and the third is not yet? It's just fading. Out of those pleasures and pains.
Yeah, the mind in the third jhana hasn't made that conscious choice yet, that I'm done with this pleasure and pain. It's still experiencing it, and it's still enjoying it, and it hasn't made that conscious choice yet.
That would be the main difference between third and fourth.
Exactly.
Cool. Perfect sense.
Mm-hmm.
Good. Thanks.
Yes, sir.
So this is kind of a question that might be better after the retreat, but I'm kind of wondering, what is a good path for us to get to the jhanas, starting from whatever we learn from here after the retreat? Should we read your books? Should we, have discussions with you, learn from podcasts? What is the best path? Knowing that, it is kind of individualized, but is there a general best, fastest way to get to the jhanas?
We are going to talk towards the end of the retreat about continued support and how to integrate the teachings into your day-to-day life. We're talking about that on Friday. But I'll just say here, you're not interested in hurrying up and getting to the jhanas. That's the craving, right? You would like to get rid of that part, but then, let's talk towards the end, because I already have that in the retreat content to talk about continued support. And then it does become personalized to talk individually, but just get rid of that hurry up stuff.
Thanks.
Yes, ma'am.
And from what I learned, I think it's really good to stay in jhanas. And I want to know why should we improve to enlightenment? And what is the difference between enlightenment and jhanas?
Yeah, the difference is that in the jhanas, you're still experiencing discontentedness. In enlightenment, you're not. And you're also not experiencing the high degree of focus, concentration, clarity, and deep memory that you experience in enlightenment. You're not experiencing that in the jhanas. In the jhanas, you still have unwholesome karma. Your relationships are not all cleared out. You're still having difficulties and struggles in some of your relationships. By the time you get to enlightenment, you don't have that. All your relationships are at ease. Everything's harmonious. You're not having any struggles or difficulties in life whatsoever. In the jhanas, that's not the case. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
In the first jhana, you gave an example related to the scenario where maybe your wife is yelling at you because you didn't take the trash out, and but that's on her, that she's angry and she has this expectation of something, of a way that she's wanting things to go. And you had mentioned choosing right speech. And can you explain that just a little further?
Yeah, the thinking and pondering, that's what we were talking about with the first jhana. That's where you're experiencing whatever you're experiencing in day-to-day life, but you're thinking through these teachings and trying to figure out what would be the best way for me to handle this situation. Because if wife is yelling and hollering, which my wife never has done about the trash, by the way, if wife is yelling and hollering about the trash, we know that, okay, this is her mind causing that, but still you're in this committed relationship that you would like to resolve, you would like to sort out, and you would like to approach this in a skillful way. That's what the thinking and pondering is, that you'd like to be skillful in all your decisions. And going and talking with someone who's angry and mad, that's one of the things that you'd be thinking and pondering about. It's not the proper time to talk. Because we talked about that early in the retreat, how you were saying, well, maybe we should go talk to people that are angry or frustrated, and that's us being irresponsible to walk away. But if you've gotten to this first jhana, the individual is going to be thinking and pondering and be like, it's not the proper time because of the 5 factors of well-spoken speech, and if I go talk now, it's just going to make things worse. And what I'm interested in is extinguishing this unwholesome karma and making things better.
I think the missing part for me, or the part that I want connected, is between taking personal responsibility, that like maybe you forgot to take the trash out, but also this person's upset, and that's their own mental state that they're upset.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's their own mental state that they're upset because they're craving for me to take that trash out at a certain time in a certain place, right? So this trash being taken out isn't going to happen the way that this person wants it to happen. It's just not going to ever happen that way. And as long as that person holds on to the expectation and the want and the longing and yearning for that permanence, then they're going to keep making themselves upset and angry and frustrated. So there's no irresponsibility, or I can't remember the word you just used. It's not that it's on the person that they didn't take out the trash. It's that this person's mind is craving for the trash to be taken out, and that's the cause of their problem. But as a wise individual, if you're in that kind of situation, you're going to think and ponder, how can I skillfully approach this situation and resolve it? Just taking out the trash doesn't solve this problem, because this person still has the craving in their mind. That's the real cause of the problem. The fact that I haven't taken out the trash in this example, that's not the actual problem. No. Yes, sir.
When you talk about an enlightened being, you mean the one who is in the 4th state of enlightenment, right?
Enlightened being, yes, an enlightened being is in the 4th stage. Anything less than the 4th stage of enlightenment, the mind is still unenlightened. Okay. Even in the 1st, 2nd, 3rd stage, it's still unenlightened. Mm-hmm. Okay. Yes, sir.
Maybe stupid question, but 4th jhana, is that the 1st stage?
No,
okay.
It's after the 4th jhana that the mind then moves into the 1st stage of enlightenment. Okay. But you wouldn't be able to get there without having experienced all of these. So this is, if you guys remember my analogy about getting to base camp in Mount Everest, this is getting to base camp in Mount Everest, right? You need to learn the Eightfold Path, the Four Noble Truths, the meditation training, the 5 precepts, all those kinds of things. You would have had to have done all of that stuff and experienced all of these things in order to get to that base camp, right? So you would have had to put on your hiking boots, go out on the trail. You would have to experience the wind blowing in your face, falling down on your knees and getting wet, and your rope slipping. And you have to experience all these things to get to base camp in Mount Everest. You don't just stumble into base camp at Mount Everest. You can stumble onto a trail anywhere. That's what these jhanas are. You can stumble into these, but you're not going to stumble into the 1st stage of enlightenment, just like you're not going to stumble into the base camp of Mount Everest. So the base camp of Mount Everest is the 1st stage of enlightenment. You've already done a lot of preliminary work to be able to get there. So you would have to experience all of these to get to that 1st stage of enlightenment. Mm-hmm. Okay, I'm not seeing any other questions anywhere. There's a fair amount of things that I still have here to share. it's a little bit after 8:30. You guys have a lot of questions, which is great. It's wonderful that you guys ask the questions that you do to get the clarification that you need. But anything beyond this is just additional content to help you further understand these jhanas. And normally I would go through this in a lot of detail. But I'm not sure how much detail we need to go through this. This is essentially using the words of the Buddha to help you see what he's teaching about the jhanas. And normally what I would do is go through this and make sure you understand each one of these. But these slides are actually on our website. If you go to buddhadailywisdom.com and you go to free books, you can scroll down to the bottom and you can get a PDF of this. What I've done here is I've gone through all the discourses of the Buddha and I've extracted excerpts where he's talking about the jhanas and specific things about the jhanas. So maybe I'll just go through them. When you go through, but I'm not going to go through them as thoroughly as I normally would. So this first one is that when you get to the first jhana, you've blindfolded this being of Mara. We were talking about Mara. Somebody asked a question in the back a couple of days ago. This is that formless being that is looking to cause calamity in the world. By the time you get to that first jhana, this being knows that you're too wise, that it can't influence you, so it's not going to try to influence you any longer. You're secure from danger. You can see the words of the Buddha on this here. That evil one, the Mara, is unable to affect you. You're now experiencing this higher mind. There's a higher consciousness. It's not as high as in you're in the first, second, third, and fourth stage of enlightenment, but you're experiencing a higher consciousness or a higher mind. The jhanas lead to enlightenment. You can see here where the Buddha is talking about how the jhanas are needed in order to be able to get to enlightenment. If you die in the jhanas, there is an improved rebirth. That's not the ultimate goal, to be reborn. The ultimate goal is to get to enlightenment and escape all of that, but there is an improved rebirth. And then the Buddha talks about what's called inconceivable matters. There's 4 inconceivable matters, meaning these are things that you couldn't actually understand without having experienced them. He talks about understanding the experiences of a Buddha, like an actual Buddha getting to enlightenment on their own. You wouldn't be able to understand that unless you were an actual Buddha, right? Experiencing the jhanas, you wouldn't be able to fully understand what the jhanas are until you're actually experiencing them. The Buddha talks about it as an inconceivable matter, that we can sit here and talk about it and I can explain it to you and I can help you understand it all day long, but you're not going to fully understand it until you're actually experiencing it. And there's 2 other inconceivable matters too, but he talks about the jhanas as being inconceivable. And if you tried to peer into it in utter detail about what every single jhana was, then it would lead to madness or frustration. That's what he shares. But the things that you guys were talking about, those are all questions that you can easily get answers to, and it's going to help you to understand these. But if you tried to peer into it in excruciating detail, that's where the Buddha talks about it would lead to madness or frustration, because you can't fully understand what the jhanas are until you're actually experiencing them. But you can understand them to a certain degree. Then I talk about how to attain the jhanas. I talk about the elimination of what's called the 5 hindrances. These are the 5 things that are going to hinder you from getting to enlightenment. And these are mostly part of the fetters, but not entirely. Complacency is not part of the fetters, but these others are part of that. Meditation is needed in order to be able to get to the jhanas, but you need more than just meditation. Here you can see the Buddha talking about how meditation leads to the jhanas. And then he talks here about elimination of selfishness, that you wouldn't actually be able to experience the jhanas if the mind was selfish. So that's where the generosity comes in. And that's how you can see that it's more than just meditation that leads to enlightenment, and leads to the jhanas. But there's other ways you can see that too, that's more than just meditation that leads to the jhanas. So here he talks about that you need to eliminate selfishness to be able to experience the jhanas. Okay, and then this is just showing you the reference for that, because whenever I show the words of the Buddha, I will typically show a reference so that you know that you can go back to the original source teachings of the Buddha and be able to see where these things are. So this is where that comes from. And then lastly, the way I like to finish up talking about the jhanas is that once you're starting to experience the jhanas, it's time to start focusing on the 10 fetters. When you start noticing these qualities of mind, you need to start pivoting and start focusing on the 10 fetters to progress into the 4 stages of enlightenment. Ensure that when you're in the jhanas, that you're working towards the elimination of complacency and conceit, because those are the two things that can get you bogged down in the jhanas, is that the mind can become complacent or it can become conceitful. So be sure that you're working on eliminating that. Also, understand that you're not done yet. Because those qualities of the jhanas are so pleasurable, the mind can get bogged down there. Understand that you're not done yet, that this is like where the real work actually begins, because you've learned enough and you've established enough of your practice of the Eightfold Path that now the real work begins to really focus on each one of those fetters individually. And then what I share is the light bulb is flickering at this point. Don't let it go out. Keep working on doing all the things that you were doing that got you to the jhanas. It was the Eightfold Path and meditation and all those connected teachings that got you to the jhanas. So don't let the light bulb go out. Keep staying focused. Determination, dedication, and diligence. So continue practicing the Eightfold Path, because that's what got you to the jhanas. And then typically what I do to end this off is I say, okay, what questions do you guys have about the Eightfold Path? Because that's what's going to get you to the jhanas. So I usually have time here to kind of pause and say, what questions do you have about the Eightfold Path? So if you guys have any questions about the Eightfold Path, you can come talk to me and I'll help you guys to understand this. Because as I mentioned to you at the beginning of this talk, you're going to need to revisit the Eightfold Path multiple times and really dial that in closely. So some of you guys have learned that, some of you guys haven't, but usually I have some time here at the end of this talk to answer any remaining questions that you guys have about the Eightfold Path. But remember, at the end of the retreat, we're going to have a closing discussion, which is time to just kind of random questions about everything and anything. So I've kind of built that in, because sometimes the retreats are like this, where there's a lot of questions during the retreat, so we don't get a chance to do everything, but we've got that closing discussion on Friday where we can just have random questions, and this might be some of the questions you ask, or you might decide to talk with me privately before we get to that point. Okay, so this is what I have to share with you guys tonight on this. And tomorrow, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be starting off our day with breathing mindfulness meditation, just like we do each day. I'm going to be teaching you the 5 aggregates and the 6 sense bases. You would need this in order to get to the first stage of enlightenment. You wouldn't be able to get to the first stage of enlightenment without understanding these 2 teachings. They're going to help you significantly. Then after that, I'm going to teach you how to, one second, we're going to have a break, because I'm going to teach you about identifying your cravings and how to eliminate them, almost surgically going in to eliminate them. Then we're going to take a break. Then we're going to learn dependent origination. This is the highest, most ultimate truth of the Buddha. You need this to get to the first stage of enlightenment. This is going to help you understand the cycle of rebirth. This is going to help you to understand why you're cultivating wisdom. This is going to show you the detailed steps of why you keep experiencing the aging and death, the birth, why you keep experiencing discontentedness. The Four Noble Truths gives you a window into why you're experiencing discontentedness, which is craving, desire, attachment. Then we talked about the 3 poisons or 3 unwholesome roots of craving, anger, and ignorance. But this is the 12 interlinking steps that's showing you from the very first cause and condition all the way down to discontentedness. This is like the detailed work. So I'm going to walk you guys through that in our morning. Then we have our excursion. Actually, did I miss anything? No. Oh yeah, I'm going to teach you this. Developing accomplishment in view. You need this to get to the first stage of enlightenment too. Then we have our excursion, which if you guys would like to go tomorrow, it's a Hua Tung Tao. It's a park. It's a reservoir where they have bamboo huts all the way around the reservoir, and they have really good food, and we can just go and relax and hang out. If you'd like to do a little bit of swimming or hiking, they have zip lining over there. They have bikes, they have ATVs, things like this. Or if you'd like to just sit back and relax and talk and have some nice food, it's a national park, and it's a great time to go over there and kind of hang out in nature and have some food and hang out in these bamboo huts. So if you guys would like to go to that, we'll organize the vans to be able to go and then have some food over there. So just to get an idea of how many vans, or if I even need to reserve vans, can I see a show of hands of anybody who's planning to go to this? Okay, so we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and I'm 12. Okay, so that could be one van, and that would actually keep the cost way down for the van. It's going to be a lot less expensive for the van tomorrow. It's only 1,500 baht for one van. So if we have 12 people divided by 1,500, that'll keep the cost really low for a van. So yeah, this is a great time to go out and do some walking and be in nature and stuff like that. So then when we come back from that, in the afternoon or in the evening, we're going to do loving kindness meditation together. But then I'm going to teach you the first fetter. This is where we're going to now start focusing on the fetters. I'm going to explain to you what it is. I'm going to explain to you the symptoms that you experience because of this, because you'll be able to independently verify that you actually have this fetter. Then I'm going to explain to you how to eliminate it. Then I'm going to explain to you how to know that you've actually eliminated it. Once it's actually out of the mind, you'll know there's certain indicators to help you understand that this is out of your mind. So whatever you guys decide to do the rest of the evening, have a wonderful rest of your evening, and perhaps I'll see you tomorrow. Take care. Be well. Sawadee Kap. Sawadee Kap.